Good day, great day, grand day to you all. Thank you for joining us on another segment of Dr. TSA Series, a spiritual discussion. My name is Dr. Terry Ordate, and I am blessed to have a guest here today by the name of Damali. Hi, Damali.
Hi, Dr. Terry.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm well. Okay. Thank you.
That's good.
To what do we owe this pleasure of having you here on our set?
Well, I actually have two questions, but I feel like they're connected, but you can better assess and let me know and guide me. And so the first question is, I can speak for myself. I know that guilt and shame plays like a big part in my life. Like I feel like when I don't want to do something for someone else, guilt and shame comes and says, oh, well, you should do that for this person. And instead of, well, I don't want to do that in this moment. So how do you release that guilt and shame? And why is it that we punish ourselves instead of looking and learning from that moment? Because would it be like learned behavior, and then also because the people around us as well also remind us of what we did instead of just learning from it? And also a quick comment was that I was reading a book, The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've heard of it or came across the book. There was a part in it talking about guilt and shame as well, and saying that justice is you only paying once for your mistake. Injustice is continuously paying for the same mistake. And we are the only animal species that blames ourselves or continues to blame ourselves instead of just learning from it and moving forward. So that's where I struggle a lot.
Okay. I've heard this question often, right? And it's not just you, but many of us. First, I want to preface it by stating again, all of the discussions that I have here on this series is coming from a spiritual perspective. And it's important because we've come so far away from that we have taken on identities, and we've taken on roles, and we've taken on structural behaviors that are not of our essence. And so when you talk about whether it's out, coming from your family or coming from people who you've grown up with, it's an alien identity. It's not who we really are, right? Another aspect or another point that I want to visit is that you mentioned this constant, or you mentioned saying something or doing things that you really don't want to, and you're struggling with the guilt or the shame of doing it, and how do you then balance that or even learn from the situation? So let me start by saying that the practice of guilt and shame is not from your higher self. Guilt and shame is self-punishment. I had an interview with someone who asked a similar question, and the guilt and shame, yes, is a self-punishment, but who's making you punish your higher self? Your higher self, your essence, your spirit will not purposely make you punish yourself, your true sense of self. In your sense of self that is developed, well developed, and grounded in your essence, grounded in spirituality, grounded in the understanding that all is one, you would not punish yourself. So what self-talk is influencing you in that moment to feel that guilt and shame? As opposed to what you mentioned earlier, how do we learn the lessons from that moment? And that is the key with everything we do. So let's say you're feeling this guilt and this shame, right? one, you want to ask yourself, but why am I feeling this way? This feeling is not beneficial to me or my highest self. This energy does not support my highest self. So let me recalibrate and see myself and feel and understand and know that you're a spiritual being having a physical experience. So once you've done that, then you sit within that space and you ask your spirit, what is the lesson in this moment? What is it that I can learn in this moment that will support my highest and best good, that will support the identification of my highest and self-good, that will expand my consciousness in this moment, in this experience that I'm having? How can I conclude on a level that would support the expansion and the connection to and with my highest self? Was that helpful?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The second follow-up question would be the process of forgiving oneself. And I feel like it's tied into the guilt and shame of your own personal self and then for others, because other people may do things to you that you may think that you can't forgive them for. And then
so let me take that first part of your question, and then you can tell me that second part of the question. And you were asking, based on your initial question, how do you then forgive yourself for that guilt and shame?
Yeah.
Am I correct? Okay. So understand that energy of guilt and shame is not an energy of light, because it calls for self-punishment. So if it's not an energy of light and it calls for self-punishment, we have to first acknowledge that we were susceptible to that negative energy. Mm-hmm. And when we are susceptible to negative energy, or we delve into this negative energy, we've allowed that negative energy to do work within us. Because the minute or the moment you accept that negative suggestion and you allow guilt and shame to kind of sift through your energy or kind of mingle in your energy, you inch out an aspect of your higher self, because light and dark can't coexist. And so in that moment, when you accept a negative thought, you're kind of inching out your essence, because your essence does not align with this negative energy. Mm-hmm. The moment you recognize that you have entertained this negative energy of guilt and shame, or when you begin to understand the depth of the damage that is done to you in separating or losing an aspect or losing an inch of your true self, the moment you realize that, you have to recalibrate yourself and understand, this was the battle. This is a challenge. I have to remember that this is who I am. And that was a dark energy trying to infiltrate in your aura and your energy and your sense of being and higher self. And you have to relinquish that energy and call it out. Relinquish that energy, call it out, put the flashlights on it, because I'll use this example, right? It's kind of a little bit grotesque, but, if you're, I don't know if anyone had experiences with termites, or not even termites, but roaches, right? It's late at night, you turn on the light and roaches are scattering. So the same example that I can use with that is the same one that I'd like to apply with dark. The minute you turn on the light on them and you make them know that you are aware that they have impacted you, or that energy had done work on you, it begins to dwindle in its energy, because that negative energy in the back end, in the background, wants to continue to do work within you without being noticed. But once you call it out and you recognize that is what it was, and it's an energy of dark, then that energy begins to move away, and you allow spirit to work with you to clean up that energy and then rejoin you in that way. When you become aware that this is what happened, that you've kind of relinquished an aspect or a part of your essence to entertain dark and light, that is what you have to apologize for. Apologizing for, shucks, I did it again, or shucks, I fell a little bit in this area. The idea is not to stay in that energy of regret or shame, because the minute you stay in that energy of regret or shame, you go down that rabbit hole and it's harder to get out. Once you acknowledge it, you see it. Okay, I acknowledge it. I see it. I know that energy is of dark. Enough is enough. No more. And you continue that process. You don't stay down, because once you stay down, once you fester and, I can't believe I did this again. I can't believe this is what's happened. You fall into the energy. You fall into the energy and you go deeper and deeper and deeper into that energy, and it's harder to get out of it. So the idea is, the minute you acknowledge that this is what happened, that's it. You notice that you fell. You notice that this is what happened. You put the light flat, turn the light on that energy, and immediately begin to converse and envision yourself having a conversation with your spirit, and have that session where you can ask your spirit for forgiveness for falling. It is what it is. But asking your spirit to rejoin you, asking your spirit to work with you on your behalf to clean that energy, and then continue to go on this process. It does not benefit you when you stay in that energy of guilt and shame and beating yourself up, because it's like, I'll give you another example. It's like you have a door, and on one side of the door there's a cookie, and on that cookie is a string, and a child is approaching that cookie, but the person behind the string keeps pulling that cookie back further, and so the child is approaching that cookie. Once the child has the cookie, the child is had. The child now has the cookie and has eaten the cookie. It has taken the energy of dark. So you don't want to continue to fester in that energy of guilt and shame, because before you know it, you'll be had and you'll be down that rabbit hole, and it's even much harder to get right back up. So a lot of times people are brought up in a culture that is latent with, you did bad, and you shouldn't have, and how could you, and all of that. No, mistakes are for our growth. There is a purpose in mistakes. There's a purpose in falling. If you never fall, how are you going to understand and appreciate what it means to gain consciousness, to learn, right? And I always go back to the basketball game, and you have the two sides. You have the opponent and the defendant. There has to be an opponent in order for us to learn and earn and gain our light and consciousness. But when you fall down in the basketball game, you don't just, oh my gosh, they tripped me, I'm a victim, I can't get up, and no, I can't play the ball. No, LeBron gets right back up and keeps it moving. You have to get right back up and keep it moving. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did, definitely.
Good.
That was a struggle for me. And then you said the second half of that question, for example, say I don't want to forgive someone because they, I guess, they tricked me into giving them money, and they said they were going to give it back to me, but they didn't give it back or something. And then I'm holding on to that energy of, oh, they lied to me. They said they were going to do this for me. They never did it to me. They never stick to their word. So now I'm never going to forgive them, and I'm never going to trust them again. You're holding on to that energy of not forgiving them, but do you also blame yourself in a sense for allowing that to happen to you? So you get mad even more at the person instead of looking at, this is a lesson for me to learn from, and instead of always pointing and blaming the other person, look back at yourself as to, okay, why is it that happened? You
answered your own question, right? You've answered your own question. To blame is to absolve yourself of the responsibility of learning in that moment. Right? If you're blaming and all your attention is on someone else, you're not looking at what is the lesson in it. What's the lesson in it for you? You're not looking at the fact that 99.99% of the time, your spirit told you, don't lend that money. And we ignore that subtle voice because, oh no, it's the right thing to do. No, you are responsible to your essence first, irrespective of who will say, think, or do whatever it is they think they need to do because you did not do what they wanted you to do. You have to honor your spirit. Honor that first instinct, that gut. And 99.999% of that time, your spirit said, don't lend that money. But you lend it anyway. And now you lent the money and the person doesn't pay you back and whatever happens afterwards, the energy that you spend on blaming that person absolves you of the responsibility of looking at self and acknowledging the fact that your spirit warned you to begin with. And you don't want to take that responsibility. That's even more funkier because now you're wasting your energy blaming someone else because it makes you feel better. To really look at self and acknowledge that you didn't listen to begin with makes you feel less than, or it's more work. There's more work required for you to take responsibility and understand that, you know what, I didn't listen. That's on me. I didn't listen to my spirit. I need to work with my spirit to help me more and more, to help me increase that intensity of respecting and having that self-love and honoring what your spirit does and say for you in that moment. So yeah, you answered your own question. You absolved the responsibility to yourself and blamed it on someone else because it's easier to point the finger rather to accept that you were at fault in that moment.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that it for today?
Yes, that is.
Yeah? Great. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Me.
Yeah, it's really good having you here. And there you have it, guys. This is another segment on Dr. TSA Series, a spiritual discussion. I want to just share with you once again. Remember that you're loved. Thank you for joining. Namaste.